Hi, I'm Debbie and this is Book and Bujo. Welcome to those of you who are new and welcome back if you've been here before. Today is the top 10 classics recommendations from an English literature major and teacher. My sister was an English literature and history major in college, and she has been an English literature teacher for many years, and I'm so proud of her. She has won Teacher of the Year multiple times, which is super exciting. And I would vote for her. I think she's a great teacher. And it's kind of fun. Her oldest is also a teacher. She is a world history teacher. I was talking to my sister and I asked her to give me 10 book recommendations from an English literature major or just English literature teacher. And so she gave me the top 10 that are on most books or most schools' curriculum. But then she also said, but I would swap 2 of them for 2 other books. So let's go through her recommendations. And also let's see if I've actually read any of them. So the first book is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And yes, I have read this one. So The Great Gatsby is F. Scott Fitzgerald's 3rd book and stands as the supreme achievement of his career. This exemplary novel of the Jazz Age has been acclaimed by generations of readers. The story of the fabulously wealthy Jay Gatsby and his love for the beautiful Daisy Buchanan of lavish parties on Long Island at a time when the New York Times noted gin was the national drink and sex the national obsession. It is an exquisitely crafted tale of America in the 1920s. The second recommendation is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde's only novel is the dreamlike story of a young man who sells his soul for eternal youth and beauty. In this celebrated work, Wilde forged a devastating portrait of the effects of evil and debauchery on a young man in the late 19th century England. Combining elements of Gothic horror novel and decadent French fiction, the book centers on a striking premise. As Dorian Gray sinks into a life of crime and gross sensuality, his body retains perfect youth and vigor, while his recently painted portrait grows day by day into a hideous record of evil, which he must keep hidden from the world. The third recommendation is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, and I have read this one a couple times, actually. It's another theme of these first 3 books, very morally gray characters that make really bad choices. So if you like that kind of thing, you'll love these books. The writing style for all 3 of these that I've read is really good. There's a reason why these are classics. So Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. At the center of this novel is the passionate love between Catherine Earnshaw and Heathcliff, recounted with such emotional intensity that a plain tale of the Yorkshire moors acquires the depth and simplicity of ancient tragedy. My greatest thought in living is Heathcliff. If all else perished and he remained, I should still continue to be. Nelly, I am Heathcliff. He's always in my mind, not as a pleasure, but as my own being. Wuthering Heights is the only novel of Emily Bronte, who died a year after its publication at the age of 30. So now we come to the first book on this list that I have not yet read, and my sister told me that I need to remove one of the books from my 12 classics I want to read this year and put this one in because it needs to be read that much. So I am planning on doing that, and that book is 1984 by George Orwell. A masterpiece of rebellion and imprisonment where war is peace, freedom is slavery, and Big Brother is watching. Thought police, Big Brother, Orwellian. These words have entered our vocabulary because of George Orwell's classic dystopian novel, 1984. The story of one man's nightmare odyssey as he pursues a forbidden love affair through a world ruled by warring states and a power structure that controls not only information but also individual thought and memory. 1984 is a prophetic, haunting tale, more relevant than ever before. It exposes the worst crimes imaginable, the destruction of truth, freedom, and individuality. So another book I have not yet read, but is on my list of books to read this year, and that is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Great Expectations charts the progress of Pip from childhood through often painful experiences to adulthood. As he moves from the Kent marshes to busy commercial London, encountering a variety of extraordinary characters ranging from Magwitch, the escaped convict, to Miss Havisham, locked up with her unhappy past and living with her ward, the arrogant, beautiful Estella. Pip must discover his true self and his own set of values and priorities. Whether such values allow one to prosper in the complex world of early Victorian England is the major question posed by Great Expectations, one of Dickens' most fascinating and disturbing novels. So book number 6 on her list, which is book number 3 off of this list that I have not yet read, and that is The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini. 1970s Afghanistan. 12-year-old Amir is desperate to win the local kite flying tournament, and his loyal friend Hassan promises to help him. But neither of the boys can foresee what would happen to Hassan that afternoon, an event that is to shatter their lives. After the Russians invade and the family is forced to flee to America, Amir realizes that one day he must return to an Afghanistan under Taliban rule to find the one thing that his new world cannot grant him: redemption. The next book on the list, and I have read, is Emma by Jane Austen. Emma Woodhouse is one of Austen's most captivating and vivid characters. Beautiful, spoiled, vain, and irrepressibly witty, Emma organizes the lives of the inhabitants of her sleepy little village and plays matchmaker with devastating effect. I did enjoy Emma. She is a little hard to read sometimes because she can be very spoiled, but she thinks she's trying her best, and she thinks she's doing really good deeds, but sometimes they don't always turn out quite that way. So book number 8 on her list is The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, and yes, I have read this book series multiple times, and it is one of my favorite series of all time. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. In ancient times, the rings of power were crafted by the elven smiths, and Sauron, the Dark Lord, forged the One Ring, filling it with his own power so that he could rule all others. But the One Ring was taken from him, and though he sought it throughout Middle-earth, it remained lost to him. After many ages, it fell into the hands of Bilbo Baggins, as told in The Hobbit. In a sleepy village in the Shire, young Frodo Baggins finds himself faced with an immense task, as his elderly cousin Bilbo entrusts the ring to his care. Frodo must leave his home and make a perilous journey across Middle-earth to the Cracks of Doom, there to destroy the ring and foil the Dark Lord in his evil purpose. The writing style and the prose is so beautiful in this book, and just the talent of J.R.R. Tolkien in languages is just amazing. He created all the languages that are in this book, and just his imagination for the world. Yes, it is very slow-paced book overall. The whole series is very slow-paced, and there's a lot of journeying and character building, world building, but oh, it is such a beautiful, beautiful work. I would highly recommend it to anyone who loves fantasy books. Next up is a book I have read as well as seen the movie for, and that is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Shoot all the blue jays you want if you can't hit them, but remember it's a sin to kill a mockingbird. A lawyer's advice to his children as he defends the real mockingbird of Harper Lee's classic novel, a black man charged with the rape of a white girl. Through the young eyes of Scout and Jem Finch, Harper Lee explores with exuberant humor the irrationality of adult attitudes to race and class in the Deep South in the 1930s. The conscience of a town steeped in prejudice, violence, and hypocrisy is pricked by the stamina of one man's struggle for justice, but the weight of history will only tolerate so much. This is a book that I did read in school, and I loved it. I thought it was so well written, and it got the point across really well. I definitely recommend this book to anyone. And if you're not necessarily a reader, then I would recommend the movie. I think the movie was done really well. And the last book on the top 10 is another one I have read, and that is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. It's Christmas time, and Holden Caulfield has just been expelled from yet another school. Fleeing the crooks to Pensy Prep, he pinballs around New York City seeking solace in fleeting encounters, shooting the bull with strangers in dive hotels, wandering alone round Central Park, getting beaten up by pimps and cut down by erstwhile girlfriends. The city is beautiful and terrible. In all its neon loneliness and seedy glamour, its mingled sense of possibility and emptiness. Holden passes through it like a ghost, thinking always of his kid sister, Phoebe, the only person who really understands him, and his determination to escape the phonies and find a life of true meaning. The Catcher in the Rye is an all-time classic in coming-of-age literature. I did read Catcher in the Rye last year, and it is basically a stream of consciousness writing from a 16-year-old boy's perspective. And while at times it can be a little annoying and obnoxious reading about his every thought that comes into his head at the time, it is still written very well and is a great coming of age story, especially if you are reading this in high school or junior high, which I did not. This was my niece's favorite classic when she was in school. So overall, I read 7 of the 10 top classics that an English literature major would recommend. But I did say that my sister would swap out 2 books for 2 other books, and those 2 books, she would swap out The Picture of Dorian Gray and Kite Runner, and in their place she would put The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Set in 17th century Puritan Boston, Massachusetts during the years 1642 and 1649, it tells the story of Hester Prynne, who conceives a daughter through an affair and will not reveal her lover's identity. The scarlet letter A for adultery she has to wear on her clothes, along with her public shaming, is her punishment for her sin and her secrecy. She struggles to create a new life of repentance and dignity. Throughout the book, Hawthorne explores themes of legalism, sin, and guilt. This one actually has been on my list of classics to read, so let's see if I can get to it this year. And the other one is Our Town by Thornton Wilder. Our Town was first produced and published in 1938 to wide acclaim. This Pulitzer Prize-winning drama of life in the small village of Grover's Corners, an allegorical representation of all life, has become a classic. It is Thornton Wilder's most renowned and most frequently performed play. So I have not read this one, but I'm pretty sure I have seen at least snippets from the play. I haven't actually gone to one, but I think I've seen parts of it. Now, of course, being an avid reader, my sister couldn't stop at just 10 books. She said, if I could add 10 more, here's her other 10 to make a nice and even 20 book recommendations. So the next 10 are Hamlet by William Shakespeare. So I did read this one in high school, but at the time I wasn't an English person, and I read, but mainly fantasy, which is kind of what I do now. So I didn't really get into this play a whole lot, but I did read it. Hamlet is the story of the Prince of Denmark who learns of the death of his father at the hands of his uncle Claudius. Claudius murders Hamlet's father, his own brother, to take the throne of Denmark and to marry Hamlet's widowed mother. Hamlet is sunk into a state of great despair as a result of discovering the murder of his father and the infidelity of his mother. Hamlet is torn between his great sadness and his desire for the revenge of his father's murder. And no one would be surprised by her number 12 pick, which is Moby Dick by Herman Melville. In part, Moby Dick is the story of an eerily compelling madman pursuing an unholy war against a creature as vast and dangerous and unknowable as the sea itself. But more than just a novel of adventure, more than an encyclopedia of whaling lore and legend, the book can be seen as part of its author's lifelong meditation on America. Written with wonderfully redemptive humor, Moby Dick is also a profound inquiry into character, faith, and the nature of perception. So Moby Dick I have not read either. So now we're up to 5 of her 20 that I have not read yet. Next up is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, which I have read, but again when I was much younger. A 19th century boy from a Mississippi River town recounts his adventures as he travels down the river with a runaway slave, encountering a family involved in a feud, 2 scoundrels pretending to be royalty, and Tom Sawyer's aunt who mistakes him for Tom. I have also read Tom Sawyer, but she didn't have that one on her list. Next up is The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. The Canterbury Tales brings together the clergy, the nobility, and the peasantry on a common pilgrimage to the shrine of St. Becket. The group decides to tell stories on their way to lighten the mood and enjoy the trip. These stories range from moral to vulgar based on who tells them. So this would be a short story collection, and I have not read this one either. So the next book on my list is on my list of books to read for this year, and that is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Raskolnikov, a destitute and desperate former student, wanders through the slums of St. Petersburg and commits a random murder without remorse or regret. He imagines himself to be a great man, a Napoleon, acting for a higher purpose beyond conventional moral law. But as he embarks on a dangerous game of cat and mouse with a suspicious police investigator, Raskolnikov is pursued by the growing voice of his conscience and finds the noose of his own guilt tightening around his neck. Only Sonia, a downtrodden sex worker, can offer the chance of redemption. This is definitely one I've been wanting to read for a long time, and is also my sister's favorite on her list. Book number 16 I have read and thoroughly enjoyed, and that is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I have actually watched a couple versions of the movie as well. Grown-up Meg, tomboyish Jo, timid Beth, and precocious Amy. The four March sisters couldn't be more different, but with their father away at war and their mother working to support the family, they have to rely on one another. Whether they're putting on a play, forming a secret society, or celebrating Christmas, there's one thing they can't help wondering. Will Father return home safely? This is just a charming book that brings you on an emotional roller coaster from start to finish, and it is just beautiful. Book number 17, I think I have started this book at one point in my life, but I have never finished it. And that is Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra. Don Quixote has become so entranced by reading chivalric romances that he determines to become a knight-errant himself. In the company of his faithful squire, Sancho Panza, his exploits blossom in all sorts of wonderful ways. While Quixote's fancy often leads him astray, he tilts at windmills, imagining them to be giants. Sancho acquires cunning and a certain sagacity. Sane madman and wise fool, they roam the world together, and together they have haunted readers' imaginations for nearly 400 years. With its experimental form and literary playfulness, Don Quixote has been generally recognized as the first modern novel. This is one I know the story of. I haven't quite read it from start to finish, so I do look forward to reading this maybe next year. Book number 18 on the list I actually haven't heard of before, and that is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. And this one is from the 1950s. A simple story of a strong man whose life is dominated by fear and anger. Things Fall Apart is written with remarkable economy and subtle irony. Uniquely and richly African, at the same time it reveals Achebe's keen awareness of the human qualities common to men of all times and places. This one sounds like it'd be an interesting one, and I definitely want to put this one on my to-read list. Book number 19 is another one I haven't really heard of before, and that is My Antonia by Willa Cather. Through Jim Burden's endearing smitten voice, we revisit the remarkable vicissitudes of immigrant life in the Nebraska heartland with all its insistent bonds. Guiding the way are some of literature's most beguiling characters: the Russian brothers plagued by memories of a fateful sleigh ride, Antonia's desperately homesick father and self-indulgent mother, and the coy Lena Lingard. Holding the pastoral society's heart, of course, is the bewitching, free-spirited Antonia. And book number 20 is The Awakening by Kate Chopin. When first published in 1899, The Awakening shocked readers with its honest treatment of female marital infidelity. Audiences accustomed to the pieties of late Victorian romantic fiction were taken aback by Chopin's daring portrayal of a woman trapped in a stifling marriage who seeks and finds passionate physical love outside the confines of her domestic situation. Aside from its unusually frank treatment of a then controversial subject, the novel is widely admired today for its literary qualities. Edmund Wilson characterized it as a work quite uninhibited and beautifully written, which anticipates D.H. Lawrence in its treatment of infidelity. Although the theme of marital infidelity no longer shocks, few novels have plumbed the psychology of a woman involved in an illicit relationship with the perception, artistry, and honesty that Kate Chopin brought to The Awakening. So out of the second set of 10 books that my sister recommended, I have only read 2 of them. So the other 8 are going to have to go on my to-be-read list for classics. And then, of course, she wasn't done yet. Oh no, she had 3 runners-up. And I am happy to say that I have read 2 of them, and I have seen the play of the 3rd one, but I still need to read that one. And the first one is one of my favorite classics, and that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Charlotte Bronte tells the story of orphaned Jane Eyre, who grows up in the home of her heartless aunt, enduring loneliness and cruelty. This troubled childhood strengthens Jane's natural independence and spirit, which prove necessary when she finds employment as a governess to a young ward of Byronic, brooding Mr. Rochester. As her feelings for Rochester develop, Jane gradually uncovers Thornfield Hall's terrible secret, forcing her to make a choice. Should she stay with Rochester and live with the consequences, or follow her convictions, even if it means leaving the man she loves? A novel of intense power and intrigue, Jane Eyre dazzled readers with its passionate depiction of a woman's search for equality and freedom. I have found that I do love Gothic classics. They are just hit that spot with me. Love them. And that is one I have seen the movie for as well and would highly recommend. The second runner-up is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, which I have also read and thoroughly enjoyed. The romantic clash between the opinionated Elizabeth and her proud beau, Mr. Darcy, is a splendid performance of civilized sparring, and Jane Austen's radiant wit sparkles as her characters dance a delicate quadrille of flirtation and intrigue, making this book the most superb comedy of manners of Regency England. It is a lot of fun. Her third runner-up and final book of the 23 recommended books that she gave me, that is Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. For a salesman, there is no rock bottom to life. He don't put a bolt to a nut. He don't tell you the law or give you medicine. He's a man way out there in the blue, riding on a smile and a shoe shine. Willie Loman has been a salesman for 34 years. At 60, he has cast aside, his usefulness now exhausted. With no future to dream about, he must face the crushing disappointments of his past. He takes one final brave action, but is he heroic at last, or a self-deluding fool? So I have read 11 of the 23 books that my sister recommended, and I would love to find out, have you read any of the books on her list, and do you agree with her lists? Do you like the top 10 that she gave for just English literature people in general, or maybe the second set of 10 as her personal favorites? Have you read any of her runners-up? I would love to find out. Please let me know down in the comments. And please like, comment, and subscribe if you want it, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. And if you've made it this far, leave a book emoji in the comments to let me know that you are here. And until next time, keep reading. Bye.